First of all, every campaign should start with a clear behavior goal. We need to understand why do we do our comms? What is the goal of our campaign? And we need to define the behavior. Then we need to measure the baseline. Then we need to launch the campaign. And then we need to measure it again.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to You've Got Comms. Today, I am talking to a communications professional who spent over 15 years leading internal comms and corporate culture for some of the biggest players in oil and gas, metallurgy, and logistics during times of their transformations as well. She's known for building strategies that don't just inform, but actually shape employee behavior and improve performance. Now, with the launch of her consulting firm, Sage XP, she's helping organizations across the Gulf region take their internal communications to the next level. I'm so excited today to chat with Kateryna Byelova today as we dive into the topic of internal communication impact and how we can measure it. So, Kateryna, how are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm fantastic because I live in Bahrain now and I'm in love with the country. And I think it is difficult not to be fantastic when, for example, currently I'm now in my office and I can see a lime tree, papaya tree, and there is a sea at my backyard. So, yeah, I'm quite good. Thank you.
That sounds like a very nice place to have an office. Love that. It's fantastic to have you here. I also want to highlight a recent shout out. You were ranked among the top communications creators worldwide by Favikon. So, how does that feel?
It was unexpected and cool, and especially considering that I have no idea how all those LinkedIn algorithm work. And I do appreciate Favicon that they rate creators based on engagement level and based on content quality, not on your followers count. For example, among top 10 creators, I think that I'm the only one who have who has less than 10,000 of followers. And I think that my secret is that I treat LinkedIn as any other communication campaign or any other communication tool, where the most important thing is knowing your audience and to provide them relevant content. And my followers are active because I think it is because they share my experience and they share tips that really work. And they do comments, they ask me something. And yeah, so it was really cool.
Yeah, I see a lot of discussion in your post, which I think is really nice because that shows a very like two-way communication, shows a lot of very deep engagement with the content. And like it's just great to see how you interact with everybody as well in these
Thank you.
discussions. So yeah,
Thank you.
very, very cool. I want to learn a little bit more about you before we dive into our discussion on impact, because it's going to be a good one. So, aside from being an accomplished communications professional and content creator, I know you've also worked in a few different industries and countries in Europe and North America. And now you're in Bahrain. And now you're launching your own consulting firm. So, can you tell me a little bit about your journey through the communications field and how it's taken you to all these places?
Yeah, it was my pleasure. So I worked in employer branding and corporate culture, employee engagement, and internal comms. I worked mostly for large organizations from 100,000 of employees to 350,000 of employees. And mostly those companies were in the period of their big transformations. And I built internal comms and corporate culture functions for them, mostly from scratch. And my focus was on shaping employees' behavior in line with business goals. And I was responsible to build a comprehensive corporate culture to combine all employees under like one umbrella of corporate culture. And working for those companies, I was lucky to hire top world consultancies, and they know where they're good at. So they're really good at research stage, on analysis stage, on running leadership sessions. But when you need to develop an effective function with a long-term results, that is really a gap in the market, and they want to close this gap because I built it for companies where I worked for. So that is why I launched my consultancy.
That's really cool. So you were able to kind of learn and see how these other consultancies really added value, and now you're putting your own twist on it as well, and leveraging your deep experience with these really large organizations. I love that.
Yes, yes, exactly. And I want to be known for deliverables. So I want to be known for deliverables and actions and functions that I can establish from scratch, or I can rebuild not just an effective function, but I want to build an impact that those function can bring for the company.
Well, I feel like you just segued perfectly into our topic of today, of course. You're talking about deliverables, you're talking about making real, tangible business impact. So let's talk about it. Today's episode is all about impact in internal comms and how to use data to prove it. So when we talk about internal comms, like what does impact mean to you in this context? Is it alignment or behavior change or engagement or all of the above? How do you define that?
So for me, first of all, impact in internal comms is when people do something differently. It is when you can shape their perception, shape their behavior, and when your message can motivate an employee to act in a different way and in a specific way that your strategy requires. So yes, an engagement and alignment, it is very important, but the real impact, it is when we can shape the behavior and motivate employee to act in line with our goals.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And so when you're thinking about how you're changing this behavior in employees and making them kind of do these very specific things, what metrics do you personally rely on to measure this impact?
Yeah, it's a good question, and thank you for that because a lot of professionals struggle to measure the impact of internal comms. And I personally use four levels of metrics. So, first of all, it is reach and response. We need to understand, did employees see our comms? And yes, we need to track open rates, clicks, video views, event attendance, and so on. But we need to understand that it is just a surface. Because if you know that, like, for example, 70% of employees, yes, they see our comms, but it doesn't mean that they will act accordingly to our comms. That is why the second level of the metrics that I use is perception and understanding. Do they get it? Do they believe our message? And we need to track it. To track it, we can use some quick surveys or quick polls. But what is the most important, we can use them before and after the campaign, because quite often professional check something like once a year and that's it. My point is to check the specific campaigns and to check the specific results before and after the campaign. For example, if you run a campaign about new strategy, you can track the answers for the question like, I understand the strategy, or I do trust our leadership. And you can check those answers before and after your campaign. And that is how you can understand if your employees understand your message and if your communication campaign really works. So the third, and for me, it is the most important level, is behavior change. So we need to check the behavior change, and it is not so difficult as many professionals think. So first of all, every campaign should start with a clear behavior goal. We need to understand, why do we do our comms? What is the goal of our campaign? Yeah. And we need to define the behavior. Then we need to measure the baseline. Then we need to launch the campaign, and then we need to measure it again. For example, if our, let's say, sales team want to increase adoption of a new product, that is why we need to check the sales level before our campaign, and then we need to check it just after the campaign. And that is how we can understand this behavior change. Or if we want to launch a new tool, or we want to increase some new system usage among the employees, we can track system logins before and after the campaign. So the main idea is to tracks the difference for the same questions before and after the campaign. And the fourth and the most difficult actually level, it is strategic impact. So yeah, we need to remember that we are not the only one who influence on like eNPS or NPS. I mean like net promoter score or employee net promoter score or retention level or employee engagement level and some other strategic metrics. But we do influence, and we need to see if you can make a correlation between our campaigns and between those metrics. So if, for example, if we see that we launched a campaign and in 2 months we saw a raise in eNPS, we can see this correlation. That is a goal.
That really is kind of the ultimate goal, right? Is you need to be able to prove to the business that you have had this like impact, that you've changed this behavior, that you've, yeah, seen a difference. And I feel like that's where you really get to like really prove your effectiveness and, get some of that glory. You've changed behavior. And I really like how you talk about, the first step is like, what is the behavior that you want to change? Because so often you start these campaigns and it's just like, hey, we just need to tell people XYZ. And I think that question of what's the behavior you need to change is actually, you have to get a little bit curious of really what is that. It's not just, hey everybody, please do this. Hey everybody, we're rolling out this new software. What's the behavior? You have to try the new software, give feedback, whatever it is, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think that's the biggest problem when professional says that we don't know how to check the behavior. I think that the problem is that they don't understand what kind of behavior they want to change and they need to influence, because they just get used to receive some information and just to convey this information. But the real impact and the real goal of internal comms is to change this behavior and to motivate employees for actions in line with your needs.
No, that makes sense. And that's the difference between, having that real strategic edge and being more of just kind of a tactical role, right? Are you just saying, yes, sure, I'll help you roll out the software? Or are you really digging into the meat of, how is this going to improve things for people? What do we need them to do? How is it about action? Nope, makes a lot of sense. So we've just kind of talked about how you have to begin with a baseline. You roll out your communications campaign, and then you have to see how your behaviors changed after. All this measurement is very important to proving, the true impact of comms and being able to bring that to your leadership as well, right? It's a very scientific sort of approach to it, which I love. And I feel like this kind of segues perfectly into something that you've been doing recently. You just recently finished conducting your own study about internal comms in the Middle East. Would you mind sharing a little bit of information about why you decided to do your own research and what you learned from the process?
Yes, sure. So actually, I studied at Johns Hopkins, and probably that is why also I use some academic approach. And studying at Johns Hopkins, I think that nearly every assignment was grounded in primary research studies, and I focused my work on internal comms and employee engagement, and that's why I ended up reviewing thousands of academic research studies. And during the studies, I noticed that actually almost all data comes from North America and Europe. And then I checked that even the global corporate studies, they simply don't reflect MENA region, because MENA
Wow.
respondents makes up less than 2% in global surveys. And it was
Wow.
quite it was a big surprise for me that this the big region is underrepresented, and that is why I decided to conduct my own research on internal comms and corporate culture development here in the Gulf. And for now we have first local benchmarks, uh, and now we can base our decisions on real benchmarks, which is relevant for the region.
That's such a game changer. That's such a huge deal when you have actual real local data for your specific audience instead of just relying on the European and North American majority. Wow.
Yeah, it is. I think it is important
I
to have
hope.
like low. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I hope people understand how like really impactful that is. That's all. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, because I think it is important to make decisions which based on real data, which is relevant for your region, and that is why this research is important for the Gulf.
No, that makes complete sense to me. And so I'm curious, like now that you've seen so many research studies from North America and Europe, and you've done your own research here, is there is there anything unique about internal comms in the Middle East that you think differs from other regions that we should know about?
It's a good question, but I think, and working in North America and Europe and now in Gulf, I think that we have more in common than we even can imagine. For example, my favorite PR and HR like wars, where PR and HR debating who should own what, the same in every country that I saw it, and this is quite funny. But I have yeah, but I have quite interesting finding from research study. I'm not sure that it is something just about the Middle East because we just did not discuss it in other countries and we can't find this information in other research studies. But the finding is that the function ownership shapes the understanding, the perception, and the development of the function. For example, even it shapes measurements. For example, if internal comms sits under PR department, like under PR or comms, any comms department, they more often measure the impact. They measure comms metrics like reach, like clicks, open rates, and so on. But when the function sits under HR, they more often measure like retention, engagement level, and so on. So it is logical, yeah. So yeah, if you are professional in comms, you will measure comms outcomes, but it gives us the understanding that actually the function ownership shapes the development of the function and it shapes the impact and the results because we will measure it in a different ways. So I think it's quite interesting findings. Yeah.
That is so interesting because yeah, it makes sense if you're in the comms function, you want to make sure that you're tying all the work you do, all the time that you spend into supporting the business goals of your department. And if your department is HR, that looks like retention, that looks like eNPS. And if you are PR, comms, marketing, that looks like other stuff, right? And so that's you're right. It completely changes how the function is shaped. And I think that kind of changes the prerogative of like what is the core function of your comms team at that point, right? That's the big change.
Yes, exactly. So it changed the perception of the function, the understanding
Yeah.
of the role of the function. Just it's so it is the same function, but when it sits under different departments, it can change everything, and that is quite interesting. For example, also this research demonstrates that even the assessment of the effectiveness of the function also depends on its location.
So based on where the comms team sits, if it's HR or if it's like its own kind of PR or comms department or marketing or whatever, people assess the effectiveness of that role differently.
Yes, they assess the effectiveness.
Whoa.
Yes, they assess the effectiveness of the function in different ways. For example, when the function sits under HR, I mean internal comms, when they sit under HR, they rate themselves as more effective than comms who manage this function. And the opposite for corporate culture. When the corporate culture is managed by comms, they rate themselves, they assess themselves as more effective than HR, who assess themselves, who manage the function. Is it clear or no?
That's like the funniest like tongue twister.
Yes,
So
yes,
basically
yes,
like it yeah, these opposites, it's like wherever you sit, you think you're more effective than the other guy.
yes.
Oh my gosh, that's so like that's such a like funny little like petty thing that we do in comms. That's funny.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know if we have the same pattern in other countries because we just don't have this information from other research studies. But I think that it must be almost the same, and it is quite interesting.
That is so interesting. And I mean, I've lived it too. Like my current internal comms team used to sit under the HR department, which we call people experience. We used to sit under that department, and we moved a year ago to sit under marketing. And I do feel a big shift in the vibe and like who we predominantly serve, what questions we ask. Yeah, what our directive really kind of feels like. I do feel a shift. So that's interesting that you were able to really quantify that.
Do you have
Because
the
I yeah,
difference in measurement? How did you measure the impact of the function?
I think so, and I also think that our time used to focus a lot more on more employee focused or employee facing like projects, like because you would say like, yeah, how do we measure our effectiveness? Oh, we're going to tie this into eNPS. We're going to talk about retention because you're right, we were measuring ourselves a little bit different, and now that's shifted a little bit different. It's a little bit more strategic comms. We've got external comms as well that sits with us too. So we're looking at PR. Like we just have made a lot of changes and looks different.
You see, yeah. So this is exactly this, yeah.
My sample size of one anecdotal evidence is confirming your your research.
Yeah, yeah.
um, wow. Okay. Well, I feel like you just know the most about comms, academic studies that anyone has ever known before, given how much you've reviewed. This is amazing. So, yeah, you've reviewed thousands of academic studies on internal comms and engagement. What does the research actually focus on when it comes to impact, and how does that compare to how we measure success in the real world?
So, most academic research studies, they don't really focus on specific metrics as we do in real life. They mostly explore correlations between internal comms and some things as engagement level or a feeling of belongings or performance level, retention level, and something like that. So they are exploring if there is a correlation and if we have this correlation, if it is high or no. And I can tell you that the answer is yes all the time. There is a high level of correlation. And so a lot of research studies demonstrate that internal comms increase the engagement level, and that engagement level influence the productivity of employees.
Woohoo! That's great.
Yeah,
Like that's such an amazing thing to just like know. Like we just know that internal comms improves these things. We've proven the correlation. Like that's great for us. First of
yeah.
all, sorry, continue. I just got excited, but yeah, that's a great thing to just know concretely.
Yeah, it's the only problem with academic research studies is their language because it's academic and it is difficult to read them. But actually, we have plenty of research studies, and I'm trying to, like translate them from academic to human language. But they have really interesting findings.
And I feel like that's such a like in our internal comms community, in our, everything that we see on LinkedIn, there's a lot of kind of thought leadership. There's a lot of people who talk about here's what's worked in my professional career that I can recommend to other people. But in terms of like really looking at the academic studies, I see that as a big gap because I don't think everyone is poised to read academic abstracts and look at the results and really like measure everything and come to a really informed, educated conclusion about it and then implement it into their practice. So I think this is there's a lot that you can teach us, that's for sure, but I think that is a bit of a gap, right?
Yes, women have a special course at Johns Hopkins where we
Mm,
studied how to read the results of academic research studies. So you're absolutely right.
that's fantastic. That's probably should be required a required course for more people than it is, but that's awesome. Kind of shifting gears, we've talked about kind of how academics looks at internal comms and kind of proves that correlation. Fantastic. You've worked with organizations of 60,000, 100,000, 350,000 employees, really big places. In your experience, how has the expectation of proving impact changed for internal comms over the years?
First of all, I want to mention that in my experience, the bigger the company, the faster it realizes the power of internal comms and corporate culture, and they realize how important those functions are. Because when you have like 1,000 hundreds of employees or 350,000 of employees, as I had, it's like a city. It's a big crowd of people, and you need to get everyone moving in the same direction. It is not even not easy when you have like just 100 of employees, yeah. But when you have 100 of thousand of employees, you understand that, yeah, probably I need to do something with all of them. And I think that is why most of large organizations have internal comms function as a standalone department. It's more often you can find it there, yeah. But when we are talking about expectations about proving the impact, I don't think that it depends on the site actually, because even I know huge organizations with the standalone department, but they still don't measure the impact. And I know very small organizations who measure every metric that exists in this world. So I think it depends more on maturity level of leadership, of function itself, on the company probably. So it doesn't depend on the size, from my experience.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And yeah, maturity has a lot to do with it because I think it takes that level of experience and kind of you've built this foundation in your organization to really kind of know, okay, like what are the metrics we need to measure that makes the most impact for us too? How do we make decisions and how do we want to make decisions? So if you are kind of starting from scratch, you're kind of just looking at everything sometimes, right? You're like, I want to measure every single thing and use it somehow. And when you're a little bit more mature, that changes.
Exactly, and you need to focus on something the most important for you, because exactly when you start something from scratch, and especially in big organization where you have a huge house, you can't measure and control absolutely everything. You need to start step by step.
And so when we're thinking about all the things that we measure, like, do you have a measurement framework or model that you find most actionable in these large scale organizations?
The same. I don't think that the measurement depends on the size of the organization, because you need to check the same and you need to test the same as I mentioned before. Yeah, so it's like reach, understanding, behavior change, and strategic impact. And the only thing that change is the volume of data. For example, when I worked for the largest organization, I had 40,000 of respondents in my employee engagement survey. And it's a huge amount of data.
Wow.
Yeah. But the logic behind what you measure and why you measure remains the same. For example, yes, in my career, I worked mostly for large organizations. But for now, I have a client with 1,000, like almost 1,000 of employees. For me, it's just nothing, after 100,000 of employees, like 1,000 is like quite small company. And we are building the function now, and we build the same measurement framework, and we expect the same impact. We still need to shape the behavior of those 1,000 of employees in line with their business goals.
Nope, that makes sense. It's all just about scale at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so you mentioned 40,000 survey respondents. That I mean, that must have been amazing. There's a lot of ways to gather feedback. How do you balance data from pulse surveys and focus groups and engagement platforms and giant surveys like that? And how do you make sure to act on these results?
To be honest, I have never had to balance different data sources, because I always gather feedback with a clear understanding why do I need this feedback. And for example, if I need to know some quick input, I will run the pulse survey. If I need a deeper understanding of something from those surveys, I will go for focus groups and so on. And the same with acting on the results. If I gather the feedback, it means that probably I don't have enough information to make a decision. And that is why I need to gather like additional information, or I need to gather feedback. That is why when I get this information, when I have this information, I will just act based on it. Yeah, so for me, I never had those challenges because I do understand why, with which calls I gather the feedback.
I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, you're not asking people to fill out, their opinion to give you their voice unless you have a specific way that you're going to use that, right? Otherwise, yeah, you get all this data coming in and you're just kind of sitting there like, neat. People shared their opinions, people took time out of their day. What do I do with it now, right? It's much more impactful when you have a plan and it's yeah, like you said, I don't know how to proceed with something. I'm going to ask the organization and now I know how to proceed based on that feedback, right? Very swift, agile and not wasting anyone's time.
Exactly. It is the same as with measuring behavior. Yeah, the same with gathering feedback. You need to understand in advance. So before changing and measuring the behavior, you need to understand, and before launching the campaign, you need to understand what is the goal of your campaign. And the same with gathering feedback. You need to understand the goal of gathering of this feedback. And if you understand it, probably you will not have any problems um, with balancing this.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense to me. And so, we're talking about surveys, we're talking about getting feedback. Can you share an example where a qualitative insight led to a measurable improvement in your strategy?
Yeah, sure. I have a favorite example actually from my this favorite employer, the biggest one with 350,000 employees. So I started work for them with a clear goal of improvement employee performance because we had extremely low level of NPS, Net Promoter Score, and we realized that we need to start with employees. You know, as I like to say, happy employees means happy clients. And it was a big company and a lot of tools and so on, so and big house. So that is why I started with analyzing everything I could analyze, like tools, messaging, programs, and so on and so on. And the most important part, of course, was audience profiling. And so we ran employee engagement survey, like a regular one. And I added one open-ended question: why do you work here? So we gathered 25,000 of answers because it was the first survey. Next year we had more and more. And around 5,000 of answers were on this my question, why do you work here? And I do remember that it was Saturday. I decided to go to the office and to read those answers because for me it was like about understanding of my employees, and I was just starting to work there and they needed. And that is why I went to office on Saturday, and they just start to read the answers. And of course, most of answers were something like, I don't have another job, or I get used to work here, or I don't have a degree to work somewhere else in a like bank or something like that, and that is why I work as a post officer and so on. But also, I saw the answer something like, I feel that I connect people. I feel that people from my area can rely on me, and so on and so on. That I connect families. And I realized that they are talking about their social purpose, about their important social role and social mission. And I decided that it will be the foundation of our key messaging, the social purpose. And of course, we had another key messaging depending on key goals. And of course, they could change depending on strategy and products and goals and so on. But this social purpose was our red thread We use it in communication campaigns. We use it in recognition programs, like everywhere. And of course, yeah, we had some other problems as well. But in complex, we saw our eNPS rose by 32%. It's incredible. Yeah. And
Wow.
moreover, yes, and moreover, when we ran the same survey with the same question, like why do I work here, more and more people started to answer that I am proud to be a post officer because I feel my important role. I feel my social impact. I feel my social purpose and so on. So, which means that this qualitative data, it gave us this measurable impact because people started to feel themselves more valued, more important for the company, and they started to perform better. So this is my favorite example.
I mean, that's a great example. And I think if you're in a comms role and you're ever wondering, oh, all this work I do about communicating our mission, about communicating our values, does it really have impact? I think this is such a, a, a totally demonstrable way that this does have such huge impact on your employees, right? You talked about the social purpose. That's like another way that you can think about your mission and values, right? It made a concrete difference in their working life and in the way that you talk to employees and then the way that they think about the work they do. That's pretty
Yes,
huge.
absolutely. Thank you. And I absolutely agree with you. Yes. And I think that is the power of our function, and that is the impact that make me to be in love with the function actually.
Oh, that's so awesome. So we've learned so much, we've covered so much. I'm just wondering, as we kind of wind down here with our discussion, what advice would you give to comms professionals in companies where they feel like their function is undervalued or like they have to prove themselves and prove their job?
Sam, first of all, thank you for this question because I think it is very relevant for internal comms professionals. And first of all, I want to say that you need to make your work visible and understandable because people won't value what they don't see or don't get. So I can recommend you three short steps. First of all, you can build a short presentation, and you can meet with department heads, and you can present them internal comms function and how this function can help them. The second one, you need to remember that if you are not in the room, your results should be in the room. That is why I give your leaders short, clear updates that they can use with CEO meetings or in internal events. And the third one, you need to remember about early buy-in. Before launching something big, ask for a feedback of other leadership, because if they feel familiar with something, they will more likely to support it. So the short advice is try to sell your function inside the company. That is it.
If I take away nothing else, that phrase, if you're not in the room, your results should be. I mean, that's such an amazing way to get a seat at the table at, leadership meetings without actually having to be in every meeting. And I think that's a great way that you can really um, help other people not only understand your impact, but talk about it too, right?
Exactly.
Oh, I love
Because
this so much.
thank you. It's a corporate life, and we need to understand that we can be best managers ever, best comms professional ever, but there are some rules of corporate life and corporate career. And we need to follow those rules if we want to be successful and if we want to build a successful function.
This is great. I feel like I need to print this exact advice in a PDF and just like stick it up there and just remember it. That's yeah, I feel like a lot of people are going to find that very useful. So, just thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I've so enjoyed our conversation and like again, I've learned a lot. I wish we could chat even longer, but before we wrap things up, how should people connect with you and follow along for more amazing advice and insight?
It's my LinkedIn, so you can follow me there. And thank you so much for this conversation, Sam, especially that it is 7 a.m. For you. Yeah,
Oh, you
thank you.
you you unveiled my secret that this is actually an early morning call.
Yeah,
Not that anyone's been able to see the sunrise slowly happening through my window.
it looks beautiful. I like it.
Thank you. Yeah, it was so great to talk to you today, and I'm so excited to see how your research continues to shape our understanding of internal comms because I really think it's going to make a big splash.